And we are back once again on 92.5 Fox News. I am Jason Lewis, a former congressman, lightening things up this third hour in for Trey as always, because it's just fun to do. And you know me, because about a year ago it was on 92.5, I was telling you about what I consider to be a game changer in the world of health, and that was intralymphatic allergy shots. And we got a great response on that. And it's kind of fun to focus on that aspect of health. It's not, I mean, we all love the massive breakthroughs in saving lives, but treating the everyday things like, I don't know, the common cold. Anybody ever comes up for a cure for that would be a game changer, right? Well, I think we've got another one in the long line of game changers, because if you're like me and you've been struggling with heartburn, and I'm going to tell you, there's a whole lot of people listening that are like me in this regard. The heartburn develops into something a little bit more serious and more problematic. It just makes your life kind of crummy, called GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disorder. And believe it or not, there's an offshoot of that that's even tougher to treat. But it is very common. It affects millions, literally, tens of millions globally. So when I saw this development up in Wisconsin of someone who was working on what could be a very unique approach to treating this. Because, the first question I'm going to ask her is, why isn't there more emphasis on these everyday issues? There's the big emphasis on heart disease and cancer and all of that, which is great, obviously. But the everyday stuff, they just kind of say, well, take a Tums and live with it. But not for Nikki Johnston. She is a professor at the Medical College of Wisconsin, professor of otolaryngology and communication sciences and microbiology and immunology. If that weren't enough, I was going to do that. Instead, I went into radio. Okay, I know you didn't believe that. But Dr. Johnston has developed something that will not only treat your GERD or heartburn, but also something called silent reflux, which is tougher to treat up in your throat. I'll let her explain it all, but welcome to the program, Dr. Nikki Johnston.
Thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate the opportunity to join you today and to share some information about our exciting drug development program. As you mentioned, we're developing a revolutionary new treatment for reflux disease, which specifically targets pepsin, and that's to address a significant unmet clinical need.
We will get into all of that momentarily, but am I just imagining this, or is the medical industry globally and certainly in the United States more focused on the big breakthroughs than trying to cure the everyday little maladies that bug millions of people?
Correct. There's probably more funding available for, cancer, heart disease, and so I think the
blockbuster stuff, right?
Correct. But also, I think in terms of reflux disease, diagnostics and treatment has really focused on acid, and so it's not been until relatively recently, with the development of new technology, that we understand reflux a bit better, and then realize that there's better ways to treat those diseases.
If some people out there are having trouble understanding Nikki, and I'm not, I'm just saying, you might have guessed she's not from the United States. She is from the beautiful town of what? Can I say Dundee, United Kingdom? Is that where you're from, or is that where you went to school?
Yes, I'm from Dundee in Scotland in the UK.
Oh, yes, I probably shouldn't say UK. I should just say Scotland, right? I mean, I'm trying to keep in line with the Scottish independence movement, How did you get into this particular field? Now, as I understand, you've got a PhD, which is a little different than a lot of people. You were going to go into higher education and so forth, but you got your PhD in molecular and cellular pathology. How do you go from there to otolaryngology, for instance?
Yeah, so after completing my PhD at the University of Dundee in Scotland, I actually came across to the US to work with Dr. Janie Kaufman at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And so there we measured pepsin, which is the main digestive enzyme in your stomach, as a diagnostic biomarker for reflux and aspiration, and then started looking at its role in inflammation and disease. But I really wanted to learn why her patients have persistent symptoms of reflux despite maximal proton pump inhibitor, PPI, acid suppression therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, it was thought that these drugs, the PPI, by decreasing acid production, they would also deal with pepsin. They would neutralize pepsin by...
Okay, hold that thought. I want to delve into that in detail in a second. But to go from molecular and cellular pathology, did you have, okay, I want to deal with issues of the throat, I want to deal with reflux and gastroesophageal disease, or did it just happen that Jamie Kaufman was in that field and that's where you got your opportunity? Or tell me about that.
Yeah, so when I did my PhD, I was largely working with gastroenterologists in Scotland.
Okay.
But we wanted to expand to look at the role of reflux that goes more proximal, and so Dr. Jamie Kaufman was pioneering this work and is a giant in the field of LPR. And so I actually, during the course of my PhD studies, I came across to the US for about a month for each of my 3 years where I did my studies to work with her and get clinical samples. And then when I finished my studies, she gave me the opportunity to come and work with her at Wake Forest. And so just seeing her passion and, seeing patients that needed a better treatment, it just motivated me to continue to try and develop a better therapeutic.
I can think of millions of people like me that even in my 20s just had nasty heartburn on some days, and I'd take a swig of baking soda and it would clear it up temporarily. About a month later, it would come back, and then it would progress into a lump in your throat. It would progress to a feeling of malaise. It would you didn't want to lie down. It was just really nasty, and they used to give you these chalk tablets or potions that would, again, temporarily fix this. But I think I was diagnosed with gastroesophageal reflux, serious heartburn called GERD, back in the 90s. So I've been dealing with it for quite some time. Has literally, how many people, 50 million?
So the reported prevalence of GERD and LPR in the US is over 67 million and 83 million, respectively.
Holy mackerel. So this is a huge, huge issue for people.
It is. And, as you mentioned, GERD causes that heartburn and esophagitis, and LPR can cause that chronic throat clearing, hoarseness, etc. But GERD is also with more severe diseases like Barrett's esophagus and esophageal cancer. And likewise, chronic LPR can contribute to more life-threatening illness such as airway stenosis and laryngeal cancer. So it's important
this is very serious, which is why people ought to get on top of it, and which is why it's you got to manage it the best you can. But now you've come up with something very interesting here. So as you mentioned earlier in your work, that this has long been known that pepsin, the enzyme in your stomach, does a great job in helping you digest food. But when you get esophageal reflux and that valve is open at the base or at the top of your stomach, and that pepsin and digested food comes flowing backward, your esophagus might be able to handle that, but your larynx and your throat can't. Is that pretty much it?
Correct. The laryngeal pharynx is much more sensitive to damage from acid and pepsin than the esophagus.
So the conundrum, as I understand it, is you don't want to get rid of all the pepsin because otherwise you can't digest your food, but you want to get rid of the pepsin certainly in your throat, which I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves. So let's talk about silent reflux first. So we talked about esophageal reflux, which everybody knows about, I think, or most people. But silent reflux is when you wake up in the morning and you're hoarse. You've got a wheeze like asthma, you're coughing, and that's when the stuff has gone all the way up into your throat, which is really tender. Is that a fair assessment?
That's correct. And so most people with silent reflux many of them don't even experience heartburn because, as you mentioned, the laryngeal pharynx is much more sensitive. So many episodes into the esophagus are needed to cause esophageal symptoms and disease. But just one episode that goes all the way up into the throat is enough to cause laryngeal symptoms and disease.
And to tell us about those symptoms, because I think a lot of people listening are going to recognize them.
Yeah, so LPR typically can cause chronic cough, hoarseness, globus, which, as you mentioned, is that sensation of something being stuck in your throat, and dysphagia, which is problem swallowing. I mean, often you hear people have problems eating their food and end up losing a lot of weight as a result. And of course, people that use their voice for their vocation, such as teachers and singers, this can be very debilitating for them.
So laryngological reflux, or LPR, is in layman's terms called silent reflux. So we'll just use silent reflux. But that is really key here because I didn't know that I had it. I was on the campaign trail one cycle and could barely speak, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then it dawned on me that's what it was. And I'm certain a lot of people who think they've got asthma, think they've got cough, hoarseness. It's actually LPR, or silent reflux. So you've figured out, well, you tell us what you've discovered here.
Yeah, so as I mentioned to you, it was originally thought that PPIs, because they're potent acid suppression medications, they would not only inhibit acid production, but indirectly inactivate the pepsin. But I discovered that pepsin, which is that main digestive enzyme in the stomach, it's actually taken up by the laryngeal cells and transported through parts of the cell where it becomes reactivated. And so this is a novel mechanism by which pepsin induces that cellular injury, independent of the acidity and therefore independent of taking a PPI. And so
so you might have a medicine for your GERD, a proton pump inhibitor, or it could be anything you're taking that works for it, but doesn't work for silent reflux in your throat.
Correct. Most, about 80% of patients with LPR or silent reflux do not respond to acid suppression PPI medication. So there's currently no medical therapy available for patients that have that reflux up into the throat. And because most of those reflux events are not acidic, so again, the PPIs are not going to be effective for these patients.
And this is where the off-label aspect of this gets really, really fascinating. What have you and your team done at the Medical College of Wisconsin in regard to this?
Yes, we have a drug development program to develop a new therapeutic which specifically targets pepsin. So as I mentioned, all therapies today target the acid. And so we found that fosylprenavir, which is one of the older HIV inhibitors, actually binds to and inhibits that pepsin and prevents all the inflammation and damage that it causes. And so we're using a repurposing and reformulation approach to develop it for the treatment of silent reflux.
And so many drugs are developed that way. They're made for one thing, and people find out they work on another. And so they're repurposed or off-label drugs, call them what you will. And that's basically what you've discovered here. And you're in the process of developing an inhaler for this. Now, if you have an inhaler that, say, coats the throat, what happens, after you lie down? Why can't it just flow back up again? Yeah,
so we have a few different formulations that we're developing. One of them, as you mentioned, the dry powder inhaler. So the advantage of that is the larynx in the throat that's affected by LPR is readily accessible. And so if we can deliver it direct to the throat, it allows much lower dosing, which is obviously better for patients. And the nice thing about repurposing fosylprenavir is that it's a really safe and well-tolerated medication. Its only side effects are predominantly nausea in, I think it's 4 or 6% of patients. But the dry powder inhaler means that it won't actually go through the stomach, so that it would even prevent those.
And that would but would that be good enough for an evening, or would you have to use it every day, or just when it flares up?
Yeah, no. So it'd probably be taken twice daily, and that would be enough to decrease pepsin levels, so that not completely, which is good, because as you mentioned, we want some pepsin in your stomach for digestion, but the smaller or lower levels of pepsin that gets up into your throat, it will inactivate that pepsin and prevent the inflammation and damage that it causes.
Well, this is absolutely fascinating. And if you're suffering from chronic heartburn or gastroesophageal reflux and or silent reflux up into your throat, you want to listen closely to this, or you want to go to a potential website to find out more about what Dr. Johnston is doing. Where can they go to find out more information, Dr. Johnston?
Yeah, so I co-founded, so my primary appointment is in the Department of Otolaryngology at the Medical College of Wisconsin, so you can look at our website on MCW homepage. But I also co-founded N-Zyme Biomedical with my business partner, Franco Vigili. And so that is nzymebio.com. And so you can see that we are our team at N-Zyme on our website and what we're doing and our different formulations and our drug trials.
It's called N-Zyme.com.
Correct.
And the Medical College of Wisconsin, Dr. Nikki Johnston, PhD, with regard to treatment for LPR or silent reflux. I hope people go check it out. I know I'm excited about it. Nikki, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to tell you about our drug development program, and we're excited within the next month to start enrollment of our clinical trial.
That will be exciting. We'll have you back sometime. Thank you so much. I'm Jason Lewis. That does it for me tonight, folks. Back here tomorrow for another edition of the Trey Radel program. Former Congressman Lewis will see you then on 92.5 Fox News.